Everybody, welcome back to another podcast here on Tar Heel 24/7. We are part of the 24/7 Sports and CBS Sports Network. I'm publisher Andrew Jones, and joining me, our new staff writer, full-time staff writer, Noah Weiskopf. Guys, Noah covered all 15 Ohio State football games last year. I was reading up on Smith Vilbert of Penn State, and they had 15 games, 16 games. I'm thinking, okay, you had that first game in the playoff and the bye. So it's kind of hard to figure out how many games people play anymore in college football. It used to be really easy. Now it's challenging when programs go deep in the CFP, which has not happened for North Carolina football. And that's part of what we want to talk about. No one knows what it looks like. He knows the inner depths of what it looks like for a national championship program. And it's not just performance on the field, it's everything else. So he's going to add a very interesting perspective for us about seeing the Bill Belichick era kind of get off the ground and how those different prongs that Carolina is now going to operate with that maybe it didn't previously. And he's seen how it works with the Buckeyes. So before we go any further, Noah, welcome to Tar Heel 24/7 and welcome to our Daily Drop.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm excited to be here and excited to be down in Chapel Hill. Have heard great things about the area, North Carolina in general. First time down here, so excited to get started and get down there every day and be around the football program right now.
You know, it's funny. I remember you texted in our group about a week before you moved down about the weather and the heat, and I was joking about it's under 90 and it's cold or something like that. You haven't experienced the actual August heat yet, which is pretty wild.
That's right. Now it feels nice, right? Like right now. And everyone's telling me, oh, this is nothing compared to regular August heat. So we'll have to see. But I think I got you guys over the winter. I think I'll be good while you guys are shivering.
Well, September will be crazy. I remember the Clemson game in 2019. It was 92 at kickoff, and it was late September. So I'm sure a lot of that is coming. Now, 92 is hot. North Carolina football is hot right now, too. The national story, everybody has an opinion. The people who do not go beyond the surface talk about stuff that's not important, and we know what that is. We don't discuss that because it's not relevant to on the field. A lot of other things are. You've had a chance now to be around the program for about a week and a half, and you were involved from a distance before, but you've been here for about a week and a half now, and we've been in regular contact. I'm just kind of curious what your thoughts are, the early reaction that you have to Bill Belichick in this program.
I do really think that he has a nice grip on the program in general, right? Like coming into a new space, something that he's not used to. I think that Bill Belichick has pretty much the program under his wing, and I think that's really good. I think that from just being around there and hearing things especially, I think it really does feel like he's running it like another NFL team, which I think can be really useful. But overall, I think his connections and the people that he knows and his experience and what works, what doesn't, I think it really does bode well for him trying to get this North Carolina football program back to the top of the ACC.
One of the things people kind of wondered is how he would be with the media. And messaging with the media really in college athletics is your messaging to the fan base.
Right.
And I said early on, he needs to understand that there's no Robert Kraft at North Carolina or anywhere in college athletics.
Yeah.
You have millions of little Robert Krafts. They're called fans who buy tickets, fans who buy shirts, fans who stream stuff. They're the people who uphold the program to keep it going, because without them, you know, they're playing in the NIAI with no revenue. So I've talked to coaches before about that, and that was one of the reasons that Mac Brown had the messaging he did. He wanted to speak directly to the fans and use us as liaisons to the fans. Some coaches, when they take jobs, they understand that. And when they start to struggle, they kind of pull back. Larry Fedora pulled back a ton at North Carolina. Tom O'Brien, when he was at NC State, pulled back a ton late. David Cutcliffe did it at Duke. It's kind of a common theme. With Belichick, he's a different bird. Now, he's comfortable understanding that he needs to go through us to get to the fans, and he needs to communicate to the fans. But he also doesn't say anything, which I find to be very, very fascinating. And he doesn't do it, and I'll ask you this in a second, he doesn't do it in a way that is demeaning. He's not a curmudgeon. And as I said to you the other day, did you see any blood dripping from his trail when he walked off? He didn't bite anybody's head off. I actually think that if you just base it on press conferences alone, he gets an A+, in my opinion. What is your take on that?
I think that Yeah, I think it's about as expected, right? Like a lot of the people in the media covering him back in New England had said that, he might rip your head off, those kinds of things. But I really do think that right now, when he's in this space, it feels like he has been giving us really good answers on things that we're asking. He's not going to tell us what plays they're running the first and second play of the game, of course. But he is going to tell us he's going to give us good stuff. He's going to give us good answers about players who are fighting for spots and what they've been able to do throughout fall camp that's allowed them to have the potential chance to play on Saturdays and Mondays and Fridays. So, I think that in that sense that he's been really good with that. The only thing that I would say is like just very monotone, and that's always how he's been. That's no knock against him. That's just who he is. Right? Like he is monotone. He's not going to get excited. He's not going to get upset. He's going to be monotone no matter if they're on a 10-game winning streak or if they're 0-10. It doesn't matter. He's going to be the same. He's going to be monotone. I think in a sense, that's good for the program. That's good for the players to see that he's not going to get too high after wins. He's not going to get too low after losses. He's going to be the same person throughout the season.
Although we'll see what he's like after losses. If the curmudgeon is going to show up in Chapel Hill, it'll obviously be after a loss. And it'll be very interesting how he handles certain questions depending on how games go. But I agree with you that I actually think the monotone is very, very positive. To me, there's a calm confidence.
Yeah.
There's no panic button. And I've made reference to this a couple of times over the last few weeks that so often coaches during fall camp, they're in a rush because the game may be 24 days away, but in their mind, man, it's right around the corner. It's in 36 hours. Right. And they operate like that. And there are times where things get missed. They're in a rush to get the install. Then they got to get this. Then they got to start preparing for the opponent 2 weeks in advance. I know TCU was preparing for North Carolina, certainly at least by last Thursday, if not last Wednesday, which is way out. That's well in advance. I think sometimes you can over-prepare for an opponent. Belichick is like, no, we got to evaluate. We got to learn. They slowed the install because why would I try to fit this personnel into a specific box when they don't fit? I'm not going to finish formulating the box until I totally understand what I have with my personnel. That calm confidence of his is one of the reasons why every time I'm at the Kenan Football Center or over at practice, Noah, I walk away thinking, you know what? I think Carolina fans have another reason to be just a little bit more optimistic each time I walk away. What do you think their level of optimism should be based on what you've seen and experienced so far?
I think it should be overwhelmingly positive. I think you can't only look at Belichick. I think you look at his entire staff, and there's a lot of NFL experience on that staff. So I think that him alone would be unfair to say how he's viewing it. I think that it's really a collective staff, how they're viewing this upcoming season, how they're viewing getting ready for it. They're really in no rush. They know what they have to do. But I think that having a guy like Freddie Kitchens, I'm from Cleveland. He was a head coach in Cleveland for the Browns for a couple of minutes. And then they had Mike Prefer.
2019, yeah. That's
right. Yeah. Mike Prefer was the special teams coordinator in Cleveland, and he's an NFL guy. Jamie Collins was a linebacker in the NFL for a long time. And then Steve Belichick too. So I think that they have a lot of NFL experience. They know what they're looking for. They've been around successful NFL teams. So I think that, it's a collective calming, not only with Bill, but with the coaching staff in general. And I think that, like I said, really does bode well for the program and the players. I think it would really help them and their mindset getting ready for week one.
Let's go back to Ohio State's CFP run. You're fully ensconced in that. I know what the grind's like when you're covering a run. I've covered a lot of Final Four runs before. No CFP run yet. Maybe that'll come someday in my career. But when you're in the middle of that and this other news is going on where this dude's getting hired by North Carolina and he throws out terms like 33rd NFL team, what was your reaction at the time? And when you had conversations with other media that covered Ohio State, what was sort of the general tenor of those conversations?
I think it was a lot of disbelief that he would be going to college and coaching and sort of taking over a program like UNC, right? Like maybe he's taking over a really good program that has historically been really good the past 10 years, right? He's just taking it on and wants to compete for championships right away. That's not what it is. He's rebuilding a program. So I think at first it was a lot of people surprised, and I think a lot of people were very hesitant to say that he was going to be an outstanding college coach and then an outstanding coach in general with success in the first year. So I think that a lot of it was hesitancy, and I think a lot of it was disbelief that he would even take a job like that, and maybe even some confusion, like why would he want to jump into that at his age with what he's done? Why does he want to get back into that? And I think that we still don't have a lot of those answers, but we do have some of them, and just seeing how he's operated thus far operated as a head coach for a college program with NIL and all those different things and getting used to it. But I do think Mike Lombardi is a big help for him to have him sort of deal with a lot of the things so Bill doesn't have to dip his toes in all the NIL stuff as much.
Yeah, we ran a feature on Michael Lombardi the other day about his associations, and as impressive as Bill Belichick is, which is, to me, he's on a Mount Rushmore of one when it comes to NFL head coaches, Lombardi's associations are amazing. He's sitting there rattling off stories in 4 paragraphs. He's got Belichick, he talks Bill Walsh, and he talks Al Davis, longtime owner of the Raiders, who is an interesting bird to be around. I'm sure learn a lot of stuff from, both good and bad. That's a fascinating resume of associations that he has. And they have this in the program too. I think since practice started, people have kind of forgotten about Michael Lombardi. What do you think about him? What do you think about having someone behind the curtain with his gravitas, with his experiences, and obviously an eye for talent, who also knows how to squeeze the buck? They're going to spend a lot of money, but if they're going to bring in 40 guys, that's a lot of money. So you got to squeeze the buck.
It's huge. Like I said, it's really the theme of the coaching staff and the theme of North Carolina football is he has NFL experience. He knows what it takes. He knows what an NFL player looks like. He knows how to develop them once they get to him in the NFL, right? They're already for the most part developed, but they're still getting stuff out of these players once they get there. But he knows what it looks like. He knows what a winning program, a winning team will look like. And so I think that, again, that combined with everything else on the coaching staff really does help the program and will help them get back to the top of the conference. But yeah, I think that it's huge to have him behind the curtain and have him dealing with a lot of those things. So it allows Bill Belichick and his staff to really focus on football and winning games on a week-to-week basis.
You know what a champion looks like. You wrote an amazing story last year. I guess it was a player meeting the day after, 2 days after Ohio State lost to Michigan, which everybody thought was the end of the world.
Yeah.
Remember at that time, people were thinking, hey, maybe Ryan Day will get fired and North Carolina can hire him, which kind of wild to think about, which that would have been a huge story, but it's not Belichick. Obviously, it didn't happen. There's something about the players in that program, the culture of that program that fueled those kids to get together on their own and make the decision to cut the cord to Michigan and move forward, and they won a national championship. Can you kind of take us deep inside that? And I'm going to ask you a UNC-related question afterward.
Yeah. So I got wind of them having a meeting after the Michigan game, and I didn't really look too far into it because I'd say honestly, half the fan base wanted Ohio State to lose to Tennessee. That way they could part ways with Ryan Day and get someone that could beat Michigan.
That's crazy.
So after that Tennessee game, when they came out in the first quarter, scored on their first 3 drives, you knew something was cooking, right? And so when they go out and dominate Tennessee, I was like, okay, so this whatever meeting had happened, it's kind of interesting. It's something I'm just going to keep in the back of my head. And as they went on, and then they went up, I think it was 34-0 in the Rose Bowl in the first half to Oregon. And you're thinking, okay, so they're going to win this game and they're going to the semifinals. What was this meeting? What happened? What could they possibly have been said in this meeting for them to be able to perform the way they did? And then they kept winning. And before the semifinal game, I remember realizing that if they're going to win the whole thing, this is something I want to look into. And so I actually started talking to players before the semifinal game against Texas to see what was said in this meeting. Like what, just very preliminary stuff, right? What was said, who said what. And then after they won that game, they were going to the national championship. I'm a game away from writing this story. And I think it has the potential to be really good, to allow fans to see like really what was said. So I started talking to more players and got details, right? Like who was sitting where, what room were they in, were they by position group? Were they by how were they organized in the room? So kept doing that. And then eventually talked to coaches that weren't in the meeting to see what the difference was between player X versus after the meeting. I think that was really a turning point in their year to be able to, they cried together. I mean, there were players that were emotional, players were yelling, players were critiquing Ryan Day's play calling or Ryan Day and Chip Kelly's play calling, but Ryan Day's offense, people were critiquing stuff that Ryan Day was doing that they thought wasn't right. And Ryan was open to it. And I think that sort of culture at Ohio State is why that they're able to be so successful every year. There's really There's no one player that's above the program. You watched Jeremiah Smith last year. He is not even close to above the program, right? Like he is a teammate of all of his. He's a teammate. He's a great teammate. He is a mentor. He's mentoring younger guys, trying to bring them along. So I think just that culture at Ohio State is what allows them to have success year in and year out. And I think that over time, you'll start to realize that if this Bill Belichick staff is able to get that out of their players, you'll start to realize that and see the results on the field.
Yeah, I think the correlation, which is a very thin line to draw right now, obviously, we need to see the season play out. But if there is one, is no one above anybody else. There's you just see it in the drills that you weren't there, some of the early drills, but they weren't running in order of the depth chart, which you see a lot of times at most schools. They were just whoever's there. Offensive line, you'd have a walk-on offensive lineman with a starter on the sled at the same time. And the going back to the no numbers on the jerseys in the spring, I don't know exactly what Bill Belichick looked at last year when he started thinking about wanting to coach in college and what he picked here and there. A lot of his influence is Nick Saban, and he spent a lot of time around the Washington program. However, you have to look at an Ohio State, especially last year's team, especially the way they rebounded from losing that game when everybody thought the world was ending in Columbus, and they ended up doing what they did. I would imagine that there is a common thread at the top with the Ryan Days, with the Sabans, with the Belichicks, where in order to run a cohesive ship that knows how to self-repair, which is what Ohio State did last year, you have to have a certain kind of culture. And I think that we've seen him change this culture a lot. You don't have the benefit of being around last year. And I thought Mack Brown had a really good culture in his program as far as when you're in the building. But it didn't always connect to the field. And that was where some of the issues occurred, where it would snowball. They didn't know how to stop things when they were snowballing, which good culture programs generally do. I'm getting the sense that sort of that way, that culture, that internal motif, if you will, is being built. It's being built layer by layer. And we go back to the way Belichick talks to us, what we discussed at the beginning of this podcast, sort of the no panic. And we're going to evaluate. You never know, this guy may jump that guy. Last week he's talking about, well, we got some guys that are there now. Someone may rise up and jump over them and end up being starter, being one on the depth chart, being two on the depth chart. Young guy may leap an old guy. It's just kind of like we're going to let it all play out. I think that culture, that nature, that relaxed approach and attitude about allowing things to happen is probably the foundation that all great coaches have at the beginning of a program that leads you to the point where you have a player meeting like that. Because you know what? North Carolina's had player meetings. They had player meetings where they were emotional, where guys called names. Dudes were called out by opponents, by teammates. And then a week later, they get throttled. Or a week later, they play well, but there was no staying power. It was just a shot. That's all it was. It wasn't anything lasting. So your take on that, with what you're seeing so far at North Carolina, how you're learning about how Belichick is sort of going about things very differently than it was before. And remember, they had a Hall of Famer there last year. So he's kind of elevating at a pretty significant level from what was already a Hall of Famer.
I think the seniority thing is huge. I think that was something that we saw really well last year with a guy like Jeremiah Smith, and they had older guys at the position. But I think that the topic of not anything is just given to you because you're a senior, that you have to earn it in practice. And I think sort of that title, all like with practice in general, is so important. I think that's part of the reason that Ohio State does what they do on a consistent basis, is because of how important everybody in that program knows practice is. They want to make practice as hard as they possibly can. So when these guys step on the field, they're ready. They're able to play fast, and they don't have to think much on the field. They can just go and attack and do what they do best and use their physical ability to make plays. So I think that the seniority thing is huge. I think that allowing freshmen, if they're performing well, to get play time and be able to sit down a junior or a senior and say, look, like this guy's performing better, and to have that player still involved in the offense or defense and still supporting his freshman teammate that just took his job. That's something that they emphasize a ton at Ohio State, is everybody has to be in this. If you're not in it, go somewhere else. And so I think that sort of topic of conversation and that way of seeing things in a program is huge. But I think that the importance of practice and the seniority thing and having people still support their teammates, even if they get sat down and they're older, then I think that that'll all be good for a program in the future. And just in general, when you want to build a program, you want things like that. You want mentalities like that. You want guys that are going to abide to those general ideas.
Having seen that firsthand last year, can you quantify how much that elevates every position group, the roster in general, each individual?
It's crazy. I mean, I keep using the example of Jeremiah Smith and like having older receivers that, of course, if you're a receiver going to Ohio State, you have the aspirations and dreams to be in the NFL. That's the goal. That's the expectation, honestly. And so to see sort of, I'll use an example here. I don't know how familiar a lot of people are with the receivers at Ohio State, but Brandon Inniss is a 5-star receiver that didn't really play last year. He didn't play a ton. And he is now going to be a junior, I believe, and he didn't play. Jeremiah Smith sort of was a freshman, stepped in right away, started week 1, and then he was paired with Emeka Egbuka, who's now an NFL player, first-round pick to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. But I use this Brandon Inniss example because he's a guy that didn't transfer. He's a guy that got offered, I'm sure, millions of dollars to transfer to another contender to be able to play right away. But he stayed, and now he's going into a season in which he's a starter. He's worked his way to that point. He wasn't given anything. He's worked it up. And a guy that's really never started much for Ohio State is also a captain of the team. There's 4 captains at Ohio State, and he has been so dedicated to his craft and such a leader, even when he's not a starting player, that he's now a captain this year, an expected starter, and expected to honestly have a really big breakout season for him behind Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate. So I think that's really an example of like, look, this is a guy that is a 5-star guy, incredible talent, able to do really everything on the field, but he didn't start for a couple of years when he was at Ohio State, but then still behind the scenes was becoming a leader, finding his voice, developing himself as a player, and working in practice every day. So now he's at a point where he's able to lead by example, be a vocal leader, and just be a captain on an Ohio State team that's expected to contend again.
North Carolina football is a new experience for you. And I'm really curious, what are some of the things that you are most curious about between now and when you leave Kenan Stadium in the wee hours of Tuesday morning next week after filing your work?
I think I'm most curious to see how Bill Belichick is as a coach. I'm curious to see how his in-game adjustments go. I'm curious to see how he coaches in a game that's really, really important for this Tar Heel team. I'm excited to see how his coaching staff as well helps him through that. I'm excited to just see there's so many new pieces, right? It's exciting in just about every aspect, right? Like you're curious to see how the offensive line will look, right? Now that they're banged up, you're excited to see how the defensive line will look with not a lot of proven production in their past, but a lot of talent. I'm excited to see the linebackers, like every position group. I think you can pick out and say, wow, like I really don't know exactly how this position group will play, but I'm excited to see what they're able to do because the potential on this North Carolina team is through the roof. It's just a matter of executing on a play-to-play basis.
I'm most curious about and most interested in seeing how they make in-game adjustments.
Yeah.
Do they change their splits on the offensive line? Does maybe somebody else get the bulk of the snaps in the defensive interior? Because their primary job is going to be occupy blockers. Yep. Allow the linebackers to make plays. Who does that? The little things like that are actually huge things I'm looking forward to seeing. And if some crazy first game of the year stuff happens early that's negative, that's adverse, I'm really interested in seeing how Belichick kind of rallies the guys, says, okay, this is just one sequence of the game. And Roy Williams used to say all the time, he didn't call timeouts on a 12-2 run because 12-2 runs happen. You're not going to lose the game because of a 12-2 run in the first half. You got plenty of time to overcome it, and you teach your guys how to overcome it so they can stop the runs themselves instead of relying on a coach to call a timeout and the whistle to blow and the game to stop and hoping that magically the run ends. It doesn't usually work like that. Teams that over a timeout usually don't win championships. I think there's something to say about that with football as well, about how Belichick handles some of those bad stretches, assuming there will be bad stretches in the opener. What about just the scene? This is going to be a really, really unique scene for Carolina to have, first of all, a weekday game at home. They only played 2 Thursday games before. You've been around campus now. There's not it's infrastructurally, it's a challenge to play a weekday night game. So they've mostly always play on the road on Thursday nights or even Friday nights. No class Monday because it's Labor Day. So you get this standalone game. This atmosphere is going to be off the charts. They're going to turn thousands of students away. What are you curious about just the scene in general? Because this is new for you. I would think that there's an element of excitement in there for you personally as a football dude.
Of course, yeah. Like I mentioned on the field, like you're excited to see everything and how it comes together. But just the day itself, I'm intrigued to see where the students are, how loud it is, what the atmosphere is like around campus. It's funny because I remember before the Tennessee game, Ohio State's playoff game, and a bunch of Tennessee fans had made the trip because Ohio State fans were just about out on the season. They lost to Michigan, forget about it. And then you see so many Tennessee fans around there, but the atmosphere was still buzzing. And I'm excited to see how that compares to a game like this, where it's really going into a season where you have the best head coach of all time in football, right? Like coaching your program. And so I've been able, like you said, get on campus a little bit. I've talked to a couple students. And I think that the vibe is a lot of these students are just hopeful that they'll get a ticket to the game. It's a lottery system is my understanding of it. Yeah. So you're not guaranteed a game or a ticket to the game. So a lot of these students are saying, I really hope I get a ticket to the game. If I don't, I'm buying one. I'm going to be in there no matter what. So I think that mindset has really sort of been contagious to all the students on campus. And I'm excited to see just the atmosphere in that stadium, how excited everyone is to be in there, and just the overall result and how things shake out on the field too.
Noah, you will find as you do podcasts with me more and more that I tend to date myself sometimes. When I said turning students away, I'm going back to 1997, Judgment Day, when ESPN was there, and it was a huge day in college football. Number 3, Florida State, number 4, North Carolina. In Kenan that night, they had to turn away like 4,000 students at the gate. It's the largest attended game ever in Kenan Stadium. So I'm dating myself. I forget that they do the lottery system, and I don't really fully understand how they did. That actually would be a pretty neat story for you to write. So I'm giving you an on-air assignment. You have some stuff coming that will be in advance of the game about the vibe on campus, about some other things about, hey, they shouldn't have class Tuesday no matter what happens. I think they should go ahead and cancel class. So you've got some really fun on-the-scene stuff coming up here for us. Any last thoughts before we go?
I don't think so. Just that I'm so excited to be down here. I'm so excited to see how this football season shakes out. It's no better time to be a football fan in North Carolina and Chapel Hill than right now. The excitement is real. You can just tell from being around, being on campus, but just being in the area. I think that people are so excited. And there's a reason to be excited. You have the best head coach ever coaching your college football program and trying to get them back to the top of the conference, along with a ton of NFL experience on the coaching staff. So I think that there's almost no way that doesn't bode well for a program. So just really excited to be around and continue to give coverage and everything like that, and use everything that I've done to sort of help better my coverage for North Carolina fans, especially football right now.
No, this will be my 30th college football season in the media. And I'm as excited now about what may unfold, regardless of the direction it goes. To me, there's just going to be massive storylines all over the place. And I'm excited about being able to be front and center to cover and chronicle all these stories that happened right before us, because, man, this fell in our lap. They could have gone and got a lot of people that, it'd be big, it'd be interesting, there'd be a lot of local interest, but that would be it. This is fascinating on so many levels. And I'm as excited going into this as I've been at any time. And now my 30th year, I'm really old, I'm dating myself again, my 30th year of covering college football. So I'm thrilled to have you along for the ride. You will be with us most of the time on the road for football, hopefully most of the time for basketball, if not all the time. You're right there. Everybody get used to Noah Weiskopf's work. He does fantastic work. I'm so thrilled to have his perspective and sort of have his creative take on chronicling your Tar Heels, not just in football, not just in basketball, but there's going to be some other stuff that we do as well. And Noah's going to take the lead on some of those things. And I am confident he will do an amazing job. Noah, thank you very much.
Of course. Glad that I got the first one out of the way. Everyone's going to see much more of me here in the future.
Yeah, hopefully that's a good thing for people. I know that less of me, or if I just darken this out, that'd probably be better. So I could just be a blank screen and people might like that a little bit better. He's Noah. I'm AJ. We appreciate you stopping by.